Hello everyone, welcome to this video. I'm going to talk to you about how to prepare for your mock and final exams because preparation is the key. Okay, so in preparation for your mock and final exams, we wanted to offer you some revision tips. The techniques you're going to learn are all underpinned by advances in neuroscience. That's the study of the brain, so they really do work. I hope you find it fun and useful video, and that will help you to do really well in your mock exams and final exams. We'll cover, number one, getting motivated, something that many of us struggle with, knowing what to revise, 4 revision strategies that work really well. Then we'll look at revision timetables, and finally how we can keep calm in preparing for our mocks and in the exam hall. Don't forget, on the resources drive, you'll find lots of revision support material. If you go to resources, revision evening workshops and resources, have a look through these 20 folders and see what interests you, what is an area that you think you need to work on in preparation for getting better at revising, which is what it's all about. Number one, we have to start with getting motivated because many of us struggle with this. All right, it's not unusual. All of us, in fact, have struggled with it at some point when our motivation level has been almost all zero. There's 2 kinds of motivation. There's extrinsic motivation, which is reward-driven behavior, where we can see there's something that we're working for, something tangible. So if I do really well in my mock exams, I'm going to get a smartphone out of it. Maybe you've negotiated that with your parents, but it doesn't have to be a big thing like that. Actually, it could be a small thing. So if I do this first half an hour of a revision that I really didn't want to get started, I'm going to have a reward, and I'm going to go and play football with my friends for an hour after this, or I'm going to sit down and watch that film that I've been wanting to watch for a while. So some of us, most of us at some point, need some kind of extrinsic motivation to get started. But intrinsic motivation is doing something without any obvious external rewards. You do it because it's enjoyable and interesting, rather than because of an outside incentive or pressure to do it, such as a reward or deadline. And ultimately, you want to move from extrinsic motivation, where you have to see that you're going to get something for your hard work, to doing it because you enjoy learning and also because you've thought carefully about why you want to do well. That's the key to intrinsic motivation. So sometimes career advisors can help with that, but thinking about what you want to do after year 11, what do you want to do after year 13, what courses really interest you, what would you love to do if it was your dream? You can do anything. What would it be? Use that to really drive you. So I know I'm working hard because I'm doing it for myself. What drives us? Dan Pink has done some work on the keys to motivation, the secret of motivation, and there's 3 things. Number 1 is autonomy, when we're in control of what we do and how we do it, not being told by someone, a teacher or a parent, you have to revise now. That's not really going to cause a lot of motivation, is it? But we're saying, I want to do this. I'm going to take charge. I'm going to organize my revision timetable and my time, and I'm going to revise because of what I want. Mastery is improving our skills and ourselves, and we can really see that when we get better at something, when we can see that our skills are developing, that we get a great sense of reward. So that is something that you need to look for. Recognize the progress that you're making. Get feedback from your teachers and your parents, because that's going to help you in really seeing that you are getting better at something. That's a huge aspect of motivation. And finally is purpose, working towards something just because it's worthwhile. That's where, as we say, you think about what is the reason why you want to do well in your mocks? What is the point of doing well in your mocks? What doors are those final exams going to open? And every exam that you do well in is like having a gold key in your pocket. You want to have as many of those gold keys as possible, because that's going to open the most number of doors for you after your exam. And if you don't know what you want to do afterwards, think about it that way. So then we need to know what to revise. And you can start by making use of the subject specification. Get a hold of the specification booklet, or ask your teachers, or go on the website, the exam board website, and you will find in the specification a very clear breakdown of all of the content that you need to know for that exam. Then make use of highlighters, maybe print it off, and identify the content that you're confident on and those in which you lack confidence. In that way, you can prioritize what it is that you need to start revising first. Then get hold of the revision guides, because those are going to help you have the most essential information in front of you, exactly what you need to know for that exam. Speak to your teachers. If you don't know what revision guides are, make sure that you've got the revision guide for your exam board. Okay, let's look at some revision strategies that work. We're going to look at retrieval practice, space practice, interleaving, and feedback-driven metacognition, which is a mouthful, but really all it means is knowing what you know and what you don't know. GCSE Pod has a great suite of support videos, which will help you with all of these concepts, as you can see here. It's only about 25 minutes long, but certainly worth watching. So you can click on the link, or I'll put it below, and go and look at those, because not only does it tell you about these techniques, but it also tells you about how you can use this resource, GCSE Pod, with these techniques. So well worth taking time to look at. All right, let's check your understanding. Write a short definition now for each technique before comparing your definitions to those on the next slide. So maybe you've heard of some of these before. Let's see what you understand by it. Take some time to try and figure that out. Or if you've never heard of them before, try and think about what they might mean. And the last one we spoke about a couple of slides ago, can you remember what feedback-driven metacognition means? Okay, take a few minutes now, pause the video, and write some definitions for yourself. Okay, how did you do? Compare your definitions with those below now. Were you aware that what you were doing right now was retrieval practice? You're trying to bring back, remember what you know about these techniques. Okay, retrieval practice is a strategy in which bringing information to mind enhances and boosts learning. Deliberately recalling information forces us to pull our knowledge out and examine what we know. And we're going to look at each of these strategies in more detail in a moment and how we can use them in a practical way. Space practice is a study technique where students review material over a long period of time. This gives their brains or minds time to form connections between the ideas and concepts so knowledge can be built upon and easily recalled later. Interleaving is a process where students mix or interleave multiple subjects or topics while they study in order to improve their learning. It is important to remember that effortful studying feels worse. It's much harder, but as a result, it produces better long-term results. And finally, feedback-driven metacognition, we said, means knowing what you know and what you don't know. Okay, let's think about retrieval practice now for a moment. It's a strategy in which we said bringing information to mind enhances and boosts learning. Deliberately recalling information forces us to pull our knowledge out and examine what we know. So this is how you can do it practically. Choose a number of subjects, perhaps from a range of subjects. They could be topics that you feel least confident about. For each topic, find the biggest piece of paper you can and write the name of the topic in the middle of the page to set up your mind map. Then write down everything you can remember about that topic. Take your time and keep pushing yourself to remember more. Don't rush this process. Remember that forcing yourself to remember is part of the deep learning process. When you can't remember anything else, take a break, then go back to your mind map with one of your resources. It could be a textbook, revision guide, website, a GCSE pod, a YouTube video perhaps, and add a second layer of detail, perhaps in a second color, as you fill in the blanks. That will help you to see what you've remembered and what you've had to fill in the blanks, which you need to go over. This is a great video which explains how mind maps work and how to use a mind map effectively, because what it does essentially is mirror the way your brain works and the way that your thoughts work. So understanding how to do a mind map properly is going to help you as well. So take a moment to watch that, and I'll put the link below. Space practice, we said, is a study technique where students review material over a long period of time. This gives their minds time to form connections between the ideas and concepts so knowledge can be built upon and easily recalled later. The more times you do it, the more easily it becomes to recall that information. And so we can see here the forgetting curve for newly learned information. The first time you learn something, in that moment, you will remember 100% of it. But as we can see here in this diagram, over time, that forgetting curve is quite steep, and within a few days, you've forgotten most of it. But by going over it again over a short period of time, like the next day, you will see that this forgetting curve starts to flatten out. You are still forgetting things, but you're forgetting them at a much slower rate. And every single time you go back over it and do something like retrieval practice or test yourself on that, then that forgetting curve gets slightly less steep. But every time, as you can see in these gaps, you're taking a bit longer before you go back over the information, because you want to be at the stage where you're starting to forget it before you then recall it again. And you can do this over a week, as this diagram shows, but you can also do it over a month perhaps, or a year, or the 2 years of your GCSEs or your A-levels. This is a really good video which explains how spaced practice works. So take some time to watch it. I'll put the link below. And again, the better you understand spaced practice, the more effectively you can use it. Students often say to me, and go back to the slide for a moment, I really can't remember things. I'm not very good at remembering things, and that's not true. It's just that you haven't gone over it enough times, so often enough. So spaced practice demonstrates that to us, and I've been teaching this method for about 6 years. It really does work. Students always tell me after the exam how effective it is. Interleaving is a process where students mix or interleave multiple subjects or topics while they study in order to improve their learning. It is important to remember that effortful studying feels worse but produces better long-term results. So that difficulty is where the value is really being added, because that difficulty is helping your mind to get to grips with this information on a really deep level and therefore have it accessible to you in that mock and final exam. And it's a bit like mining gold. I sometimes tell my students, it's not easy to mine gold. It takes a huge amount of energy, electricity, and mines today for gold are extremely deep. They're some of the deepest mines in the world. But because it's so hard, that gives it its value. Gold is not lying around on the surface in huge amounts. Otherwise, anyone could pick it up and it wouldn't have a lot of value. But because it's so hard to extract, it gives it its value. And the same thing is true when it comes to learning. And interleaving, as we can see, does that. So here is a short video which explains it really well. Once again, I'll put the link below. Take some time to watch that to understand interleaving well. This diagram can help us too. We can see this is generally how most students study or how your topics are taught. You'll have, first of all, what we call massed practice. And you're going to cover one topic. It could be, for example, Germany, which we do in year 10, and you're going to cover that in your first term. And then in the second term, maybe you're going to go over your new topic, which is the Cold War, and learn about that over the course of the term. And then in the final term of the year, maybe you're going to go over your third topic, which for us is Power of the People, and start learning that. But interleaving is mixing all the topics up. And that's harder because you have to keep remembering, going back. And it's that remembering, as we said, retrieval, makes your brain work so much harder and therefore remember so much more. So that's how it looks in a year, but you can use interleaved practice over a day. You can use it over a week or a month as well. But by mixing up your topics, you will see that your brain has to work harder. And we'll see in a moment on a revision timetable how this looks in practice. But I wouldn't mix it up necessarily across many subjects. So you maybe want to mix it up between topics in the same subject if you're doing it in a short period of time. Feedback-driven metacognition, we say, means knowing what you know and what you don't know. So the question is, though, how do you know if you're ready for your mock? How do you know what you know? And how do you know what you don't know? That's a really important question to help you feel confident when you go into that exam hall. The answer is by testing yourself. Okay, testing is not just for a final judgment, but actually testing helps us to learn something because it causes us to have to retrieve it. So one of the things you can do is create your own knowledge recall tests as part of revision. Maybe you want to write down, you just want to learn some basic facts, So you're going to write down a test, question and answers. And the creation of this test will help you to be critical about the information and think what is important and create this test. But then using spaced practice, leave it for a few days and then go back and actually take your test. So this is one way in which it will help you to know what you know and what you don't know. But there's many ways to do this. Your teacher should be giving you feedback. That's going to help you, again, know what you know and what you don't know. But you can get other people to test you too. You could use your parents, someone in your family perhaps, and you can also get your friends to test you. So we've been doing a lot more work online, remotely. So you know now that you can link up with your friends for revision sessions and test each other. And if someone's testing you who doesn't know the course, like a parent or someone in your family, give them the revision guide or give them some past paper questions that they can then use to test you. And if they've got that content in front of them, then they'll be able to help you to see whether what you're saying is correct or not, what you know and what you don't know. Okay, now the good news is there's lots of great apps that use interleaving retrieval practice and spaced practice. And these are just two of them that are very popular with students. So you could use Quizlet and you could use Memrise as well, especially where you have to create your own quiz, where you have to input the information and the answers. That's part of revision in itself. But then, like we said, go back and take that quiz in a few days. Let's talk about revision timetables now. It's a good idea to get hold of a calendar and be really clear on how much time you have between now and your mock or now and your final exam. So work out how much time you've got. You can see the weekends here, but you can also break it up over the weeks and decide when you want to do your revision, when you're going to do that. This one is green because that is a December break. And then I've colored the second week red because it is really important that you have a break. You can't be working all the time because then you just become ineffective and tired, and it takes much more effort. It's much harder to learn something. So you need to make sure you are getting that balance right, that you are having a break, you are sleeping well, you are having exercise as well, because all of those things will help you to get that balance right, which means you have to work a lot less. It's a lot easier for you, shall we say, when you're trying to commit something to memory. So then once you know how much time you have, look at the subjects that you need to prioritize, what subjects are you going to cover in your revision, and start to create a breakdown of when you're going to do that. Think about motivation. As we said, extrinsic motivation might be necessary. So think about for yourself, how can you reward yourself? What is it that's going to be valuable to you? Not necessarily a big item, but how can you reward yourself through the day? What are you going to do in your little breaks? That will help you to think, okay, I'm just going to use a short 20-minute session now, and then I'm going to have a break and do something that I want to do. And that's a good way to use extrinsic motivation. But as we said as well, talk to your parents and maybe they can help you with that. This is an example of interleaved timetable adapted to suit your requirements. So it doesn't have to look like this, but over the course of a day, maybe this is what your revision timetable might look like using interleaving. Now, instead of doing 1.5 hours of science in the morning and then an hour and a half of science of maths in later morning and then perhaps an hour and a half of English after lunch, it's much more effective if you can break up your topics to short sessions, as you can see here. Now, you might want to take much longer breaks. That's fine. Decide what works for yourself. You might want to work for less or more time. It doesn't really matter the time. You decide that for yourself, okay? Probably you're going to need a longer break than half an hour between these sessions, but see what works for you. And when you realize that you've lost concentration, you're having to reread something many times, you know you need to take a break. In this way, you can see that science is covered from 9 o'clock right up to 3:30. Your mind is going back to it a number of times over that time, rather than just from 9 to 10:30 if you were to do an hour and a half of science in the morning. So try this because this also really works well. Lots of evidence to show us that. Think about how you can incorporate retrieval practice into your interleaving. Maybe you're going to start your first sessions here with that blank piece of paper and think about the topic that you need to cover, and then just see how much you can retrieve on that topic. Number 5, finally, you need to keep calm if you're going to do well, because your brain works much better if you're in a calm, relaxed state. So if you look after your brain, it really will look after your learning. It will serve you so much better. There's a few things that you can do. Number 1, you must sleep well, because otherwise all the revision you're doing is being wasted. We know now that the brain consolidates a lot of that information it's learned during the day while it's sleeping. If it's not sleeping for very long, it's not going to really consolidate, firm up that knowledge. Get exercise. That also helps to keep your brain sharp. Maybe those could be your reward times after doing some revision. Challenge yourself and be ambitious and set targets for yourself and develop an imaginative and inquiring mind, because all of those things help your mind to stay stimulated, to stay sharp. Ask lots of questions. Think about what you want for yourself. Be ambitious. Push yourself to do things. Setting targets helps not just for your motivation, but also keeping your brain sharp. Eat healthy foods. Greens and fish is very good for your brain. Not too much sugar, because that might help give you a boost initially. Then it's really going to drop you down. You're going to feel tired in a short space of time. So it's not an effective food. Drink plenty of water, because your brain is mostly water. So keep it hydrated so it's working well. Take regular brain breaks. You learn best when you're relaxed and happy. So live a good life. Make sure that you're getting on with people. Don't have social dramas, because those things are going to mean that it's very difficult for you to concentrate when those things are going on in the background. Maybe it's time to simplify your life and to cut out people that are not helping you, that is. And I'm not saying family, of course, but maybe there's people around you who might be so-called friends that you just find that you're in trouble with a lot, or it's causing problems in your relationship. So maybe you just have to make those decisions and think about what's best for you. And learn to use your breathing to stay calm. That is learning to breathe deeply, filling your lungs up from the bottom when you're feeling anxious about your exam and when you go into your exam. Breathing techniques will help open up your brain and help it to work well. So if you find yourself getting anxious, learn how breathing will help you to calm down. And then you'll notice that when you're calm, it's much easier for you to recall information. Your brain can't help itself. When you need to, it's going to be there because you've done your space practice, your interleaving, your retrieval practice. And there's lots of evidence that shows us that relaxed minds remember better. Okay, guys, thumbs up for your mocks and your final exams. Your teachers will have been modeling retrieval practice, space practice, and interleaving and feedback-driven metacognition in your lessons. Look out for that. And they're doing that in teaching you how to revise. Listen to their advice and ask lots of questions. We know that the students that ask the most questions get the best grades. Okay, so asking questions is a sign of intellectual courage. It shows that you're prepared to go deeper into the learning. I hope your mocks go really well and your final exams. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.